Welcome to Policy Board meeting. I'm Carm Brazil from CDTA. We have good news and bad news. Bad news is Mayor Sheehan can't make, or the good news, I guess. I don't know. God love the mayor, right? The mayor, yeah, get a motion to end the meeting. So I'm pinch hitting for the mayor today. She could not be with us today. We've got a long agenda, so hopefully we can keep it moving. If I don't do a good job moving it, move me. So first up is the minutes of the March 3rd meeting. We need to resolutions with that, please. Jordan, second. So Barrett, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nominating subcommittee, we had to make a change. I think you all know that Joe Landry retired. Actually, I think he's already living in Plattsburgh. He's gone. He didn't waste any time. So Joe took everything, the fishing pole, and moved north. So we need to appoint a replacement for Joe. And Town of Niskuna Supervisor Jamie Puccioni has been recommended to the policy board as the town and village alternate.
Jamie is joining us virtually today. Welcome, Jamie. It's nice to meet
Hi,
you.
Jamie.
Everyone, thank you for having me.
So Jamie's with us. We have that on the floor. We give a motion.
Second.
Phil, all those in favor?
Aye.
Jamie, I think it was unanimous, so welcome to CDTC.
Welcome. Thanks, Jamie.
The privilege of the floor, this is public comments. We have two here. Kim Judy, a public citizen, interestingly, registered to speak. Kim has 5 minutes, please. Kim, are you
Thank you. Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
here now, Kim? Thanks.
Great. Thank you for taking public comments as part of your meeting. I'm here to make sure support for the planned bus rapid transit stops at the corners of Colonial and Western Avenues and Eileen Street and Western Avenue are on the record. So I'm writing today on behalf of 18 other Buckingham Lake neighborhood residents, Albany 14th Ward, represented by Honorable Deb Zamer, and 14 individuals in the Melrose neighborhood, which is the Albany 13th Ward, represented by the Honorable Jenny Farrell. I also plan to read this same letter into the record at tonight's Common Council meeting. In brief, we, the cosign, support the proposed design and location of the bus rapid transit stop at the corners of Colonial and Western Avenues and Eileen Street and Western Avenue because the stops will reduce traffic on Western Avenue, improve usage of the BRT and other routes in the neighborhood, make the busy intersection more pedestrian friendly, and be a great asset for the neighborhood students relying on buses to get to North Albany Middle School and Albany High School. The BRT Purple Line will generate significant benefits to the Buckingham Lake and Melrose neighborhoods. First, we are excited to see a reduction of traffic on Western Avenue. The route can be a congested one, and the addition of a commuter bus will enable many of those drivers to transition to public transportation. This will lessen congestion, improve commute times, and improve pedestrian and cyclist safety. Second, we are in strong support of the proposed location for the BRT stops. Colonial Avenue and Eileen Street are central to the neighborhoods and are walkable even for those of us on the far end of the Buckingham Lake neighborhood. We have heard some suggest relocating the stop to Breveter. Relocating the stops to this less centralized street will increase walking time to the stop and make it more challenging for residents to take advantage of the route. Looking at the proposed Purple Line from the CDTA website, the distances between Allen Street and Colonial, 0.6 miles, and the distance between Colonial and the East Harriman campus stop, also 0.6 miles, are already at the upper end of the distance that CDTA prefers between its BRT Bus Plus stops. At the Buckingham Lake Neighborhood Association meeting, our CDTA presenter stated that about a half a mile is the target distance. If a stop is placed at Breveter instead of Eileen and Colonial, then the distance between the two stops will be 0.8, which is a very long walk for those of us who live between those streets, let alone those of us who have to walk a couple of blocks just to get to Western. The placement of the stops at Colonial and Eileen will have a number of additional benefits for the neighborhoods. The proposed changes to crosswalks and lights will make the intersection far more pedestrian friendly. Anything that makes Western Avenue easier to cross is safer for walkers and children in our neighborhood. Finally, many children in our area attend Eagle Point or Pine Hills elementary schools, both of which feed into North Albany Middle School starting this September. These students and Albany High School students rely on bus transportation, a bus stop that is covered, climate controlled, and well-maintained in all seasons will be a benefit for these students. They will not have to climb over snowbanks and will be able to more easily access the transportation they must rely on. We understand that a few residents have voiced their concerns. We appreciate Ross Farrell and CDTA's responsiveness to their concerns and are appreciative of the changes they've made, such as reduction of the shelter size, additional landscaping, limited backlighting, and an increased area of heated sidewalks. Our hope is that these changes satisfy this very vocal minority. It would be frustrating if a new BRT line completely bypassed our neighborhoods because of the objections of this vocal minority. As we move to tackle the challenges of our future, bringing high quality transit like the Bus Plus lines to neighborhoods where people live should be a priority. Thank you for your time. And again, this is signed by 18 individuals in Buckingham Lake neighborhood and 14 individuals in the Melrose neighborhood. This has been sent to Ross Farrell, and I'm happy to provide it to your policy board if you'd like to see the co-signers' names.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you, Kim. Appreciate it.
That would be great if you could email it to us. We'll get in touch with you. Thank you.
I also have here another individual who would like to speak about mass signs on CDTA buses.
Yes, I don't know that he wanted to speak in person. He just wanted the point read to the policy board.
Okay.
About the masks.
Yeah, I'm confused. The mask signs or
Yes.
the mask mandate?
I think he was, to be honest, referring to the mandate, but he was citing the signs.
In
as
favor or against?
Against.
So are we,
So we just wanted to make sure that that was brought to your attention.
it's causing a lot of difficulties, clashes between customers, drivers have been put in a very difficult situation to police the mandate.
Is it a federal mandate or state mandate?
State mandate.
Okay.
The feds actually lifted it.
Okay.
So we're in constant contact with the second floor and hopefully we'll get some relief because frankly our opposition. Okay, so I think that closes the privilege of the floor section. Now we have a number of presentations and items to move. The first is the draft 2022-2027. Yes, that's correct. Transportation Improvement Program and Air Quality Conformity.
Yeah, I'll start off. Thanks, Carm. So for those of you that have been sitting on our planning committee or have talked with your counterpart on the planning committee, you know we've been working very hard over the last basically almost 9 months now to develop a transportation improvement program for the coming fiscal years beginning in 2022 through 2027. The fiscal year starts October 1. We have a presentation today to share with you where we're at in the process to hopefully get your approval to release the draft tip for public review and begin the public review process. We have a presentation that Jacob, Andrew, and Chris are going to sort of tag team on today, and I'll let them walk you through where we're at and where we're going.
Okay, Good
And-
afternoon, everyone. My name is. oh,
Sorry, I just wanted to make sure I'm in the right view. Okay, go right ahead.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm Nathan Tracy, and I'll be joined, as Sandy mentioned, by Chris and Jacob. We're going to walk you through the process that was followed to develop the draft 2022 to 2027 tip. We'll advance to the first slide. We'll begin with the tip solicitation process, which opened on September 10th of 2021. On September 24th, CDTC held an informational workshop for everyone interested in applying for tip projects. And at that time, we also posted a lot of information to our website, including tip project eligibility guidance, information about the evaluation process that we would follow. We posted a lot of supporting data to the website, including pavement and bridge condition information to help sponsors develop projects. In addition, this was the first time we used an online application process via JOT form. There's an example of the application there on the right. JOT form gave us the advantage of being able to collect all the application information digitally, so we could very easily transfer it to a Microsoft Access database later. Applications were due on December 3rd. We received 93 candidate projects in total from 24 different project sponsors, state and local. The total funding request was $432 million, and that included all of the local projects and DOT's site-specific projects as well. We'll advance to the next slide.
Please stop. Hold on. Sorry about that. Let me start to share. Oh, yeah, it's my list. Oops. Oops, sorry about that.
Okay. Some background on the evaluation process. So CDTC staff evaluated all 93 of the candidate projects using a process that was approved by the planning committee last year. Every project received 2 scores, a quantitative score in the form of a benefit cost ratio and a qualitative score as well, or a merit score. For the quantitative score, each project was assigned a facility life benefit, which is the value of that roadway segment or bridge to the regional network. We use the CDTC travel demand model to evaluate this. Most projects also received a mobility benefit score or a safety benefit score or a user cost benefit score as well. These were added together and scaled to 50 points to form the quantitative score. For the qualitative score, CDTC staff scored all projects using 12 different categories of merit scores, which were derived from the New Vision's Metropolitan Plan. And these merit scores were also scaled out of 50 points. So every project received a score out of 100 points in total. And it's worth noting as well that the candidate projects that were scored were, they weren't competing against projects in other categories. They were competing only against projects within the same category. So for example, the road projects were competing against other road projects, bridge projects competing against other bridge projects, and so on.
Sorry, folks, I don't know why it's freezing, but it seems to want to freeze on every slide. So I'm gonna just keep it not in presenter mode for the time.
Okay. A little more background on the evaluation process. This was the first time we used the Microsoft Access database. All of the candidate project data was brought into the database. The whole process was streamlined, automated as much as we could. The staff scores were also brought into the database, and this enabled us to produce fact sheets and summary tables, which we provided to the planning committee to help their decision-making process. So the whole process was, this was all set up in advance of the solicitation by CDTC staff. And we also prepared a map, an online map using ArcGIS Online, which we'll see a little bit later. If you go to the next slide, we prepared fact sheets and summary tables, provided them to planning committee. to support their decision-making. The fact sheets were two-page fact sheets for every project, which included all of the application information, project description, a little map showing where the project was, and all of the CDTC staff evaluation of the project as well. And we also prepared summary tables. So each project category, there were road projects, bridge projects, bicycle, pedestrian, safety projects, and other projects. Each got its own summary table summarizing all the projects within that category and how well they evaluated. So all of this information was shared with Planning Committee. I'll turn things over now to Jacob to describe the process of coming up with the planning targets and the budgets and the actual project selection process as well.
Thanks, Andrew. So as Andrew mentioned, I'm going to kind of walk through the key points of programming new projects to the TIP. So to start off, the first step in the process is really identifying our planning targets. Also, we call them budget estimates. So the budget estimate is really kind of the total core fund sources that we have to program over the 5-year TIP timeline. And that's all the funding that is going to go towards the existing project roll-in, all of our regional and multi-site projects, as well as all new site-specific project programming. So these estimates are really developed by DOT Region 1 and then presented to the Planning Committee. So at the April 20th Planning Committee meeting, Region 1 presented this budget estimate of $392.6 million over the 5-year TIP timeline. And that was discussed and approved by the Planning Committee at that meeting. Next slide. So the next step in the process is approving all the existing project roll-in. So these are all of the projects that are on the existing 2019 to 2024 TIP that haven't been obligated up to this point, that are going to roll over into the first 2 years of the 22-27 TIP. So after kind of reviewing the existing projects on the TIP, we determined that there's about $86 million of core federal funding across 59 state and local projects that are anticipated to roll into the new TIP. So that's kind of the first chunk that gets whittled away of that $392 million planning target. These were presented and discussed in the Planning Committee at the January 12th meeting. So this actually kind of took place well before we had the planning targets estimated, and that's just kind of the way the schedule worked out this year. Next slide. So the next big piece is programming our multi-site and regional projects. The first one being our DOT multi-site program. So DOT has a program of kind of small scale preservation projects and bridge, pavement preservation, striping, guide rails, that they're all kind of projects that are too small to have their own line item on the TIP. So they're programmed into, there's actually 9 different TIP projects that encompass all these funding that can be used over the 5 years to kind of have little site-specific treatments across the region. So DOT proposed about $96.5 million over the 5-year TIP program for their multi-site program projects. And that was approved by the Planning Committee. And then the second piece to our regional set-asides are our CDTA bus rapid transit project. This is a set-aside that we've had on the TIP historically that programs federal highway dollars to CDTA so that they can kind of maintain and enhance their bus rapid transit system. They've also have some really great data on this project that shows how much they're able to leverage that. So I think it was over the existing TIP period, they've leveraged about $20 million into $133 million of additional federal funding and grants. So CDTA presented this to the Planning Committee also at the April 20th Planning Committee, $17.750 million over the 5-year TIP period for their bus rapid transit set aside, and that was approved by the Planning Committee. Next slide. So once we have programming for the existing roll-in and all of our regional projects, that's when we're able to start programming our new site-specific projects. This is really where the summary tables and fact sheets that Andrew mentioned come into play. So we provide all of the data on all of the 93 candidate projects that we receive from our local sponsors, local and state. So we provide all of that data that we've compiled in our evaluations rankings to our planning committee members. And that really just kind of starts the process. As Andrew mentioned, we're able to rank the projects by project type to kind of see what comes to rises to the top at the first look. But it's actually a quite iterative process. And in this round, it took place over 5 different planning committee meetings where the planning committee discussed project priorities. And again, we just use kind of our evaluation criteria as the first step, but then also fiscal constraint, fund source limitations, local priorities, and regional priorities and regional equity and distribution of projects all end up playing a key role in the site-specific projects that are ultimately programmed. So again, after those five planning committee meetings, the committee eventually reached consensus on 47 new site-specific projects that were going to be added to the TIP. That's about $191 million of new projects and 17 different local project sponsors in the addition to DOT. So wanted to point that out, that there really was kind of a good distribution among our local sponsors as well. The chart on the right just kind of has a breakdown of that 191 million project type. Really the big takeaway there is that about 86% of that funding is going towards bridge and pavement preservation and renewal projects. So the majority of those new site-specific projects are bridge and pavement maintenance and preservation. Next slide. So the final piece of the TIP programming is our transit fund sources. So we mentioned the CDTA transit set aside, and that's kind of the federal highway dollars that we program towards CDTA, but the majority of transit funding in the TIP comes from FTA fund sources that aren't really competitive with the local sponsors. So we program them a little bit differently. They don't really go through the same evaluation process as the site-specific projects do. So CDTC and CDTA staff kind of work together to just come up with estimates for these ongoing transit projects that are on the TIP that provide that funding towards maintenance, new buses, maintenance of facilities, variety of different programs. So that's about $117 million over the 5-year TIP program. And that was presented at the May 18th Planning Committee and approved. Next slide, please. So after all those, that's kind of the 4 key pieces to TIP funding. And then this is just kind of 2 high-level charts to go over what the funding looks like in the draft TIP. So on the left-hand side, this is the overall funding by county. It's about $540 million total. And again, that's our existing roll-in, regional projects, regional set-asides, and site-specific project programming. So big piece is that, the majority of funding does come in those regional projects, and that's the transit FTA funding, DOT regional set-aside, those types of things. But then for the site-specific projects, Albany County has about a quarter of the funding, and then Rensselaer, Saratoga, and Schenectady counties are all about 10% of the remaining funding. And then on the right, again, that's our funding by project type, but this is the whole TIP, whereas the last chart was just the new site-specific projects. So it's a little bit different picture when we bring in all of the transit and regional projects as well. So in the big picture, you'll see transit has about a quarter of funding, but kind of in the same, along the same thread though, it's about 56%, I think, of pavement and bridge projects in that overall TIP project type. So next slide. So finally, to kind of wrap this up, Andrew had mentioned that we did have an online map. So we have this online map that's interactive. If you or other members of the staff want to take a look, you can go in there and check out projects in your location across the region. Find them, click on them, and that'll will be a direct link to more information and project fact sheets, again, that we talked about before. So if you really want to kind of dig into what those new projects on the tip look like, this map would be a great place to start. And find all the information you can there. If something's not there, feel free to reach out to us. That is it for the funding summary. Pass it over to Chris for air quality.
All right, great. So I'm just going to talk briefly about air quality conformity and just, first of all, just wanted to make sure that everyone knew what our current air quality designation is, which is non-attainment for the 1997 National Ambient Air Quality Standard, but an attainment for all other national ambient air quality standards, including the more stringent 2008 standard. In spite of that, we are still required to do conformity per a court ruling from 2018, South Coast Air Quality Management District versus EPA, where the term was coined orphan area, which is what we are now. So one of the things we have to do is when we do a new TIP is to do a new area-wide conformity determination. I'm just going to run through the process of that real quickly. So if you go to the next slide, please. So this is kind of where we're at. I'm just going to go kind of quickly through this and go to the next one. The first thing we do is we determine the exempt, non-exempt status of all of our projects. Essentially, this is it going to have an impact on air quality or not? For this TIP, all the candidate projects that were submitted were exempt. Mostly everything we do is exempt, replacing bridges, redoing pavements. An example of a non-exempt project would be like building a new highway or widening, for a long distance or something like that. Next slide. As part of the process, we have to coordinate with the ICG. That's kind of like the meat and potatoes of this particular part of the process. The ICG is the Interagency Consultation Group that's made up of DOT, DEC, EPA, FTA, and FHWA. And they have to concur with the conclusions that we come to. Next slide. After they do that, we update the document. I don't have it in my hand right now. It was provided to you with the package. That's the official air quality conformity determination for our maintenance district, which includes not just the CDTC region. I realize this is small, but also includes parts of DOT regions 1, 2, and 9, and a small part of AGFTC to the north and Saratoga County. So we have to coordinate with them, make sure we have all their projects. We develop the report. Next slide, please. And today, what we're doing is asking you to release the draft air quality conformity determination for a 30-day review. That's in addition to the release in the tip. This is explicitly for this particular product. After that, we will take any comments we get. We'll address them in the report. And then the final report will be presented to you for approval when the final CIP is approved. I think that's it for. So I'll let. I'm not sure.
Next steps. So next steps for TIP will be June 27th, pending policy board approval today. The draft TIP will be released for public review. And then through the end of June and through July and August, CDTC will be, it'll be open for public comment, but CDTC will be hosting a variety of different kind of public outreach events across the Capital District, which I think we might be touching on later. And then from there, August 3rd, Planning Committee meeting will be up to recommend policy board approval for the final 22 TIP and air quality conformity document. However, our public comment period will be running through August 12th. So there is the disclaimer in there that pending any major changes in the final days of the public comment period. So the idea would be at August 3rd, what's been out for public review is been, we've received our comments and made any changes that we would need to. And at that point, the TIP would be somewhat final, static. And then the planning committee will recommend it for policy board approval on September 1st.
Great, and thank you for that great overview. That was really well done. I know we threw a lot of information at you. Just to back up a little bit, for those that haven't participated directly in the development of the TIP. This is the document that really implements the bipartisan infrastructure law funding that comes to our region. It doesn't deal with all of the funding programs. This set of projects is really specific to technically four core formula programs that are in the law. These are the types of programs that this table has a large influence on programming. Many of the other programs within this new federal law are discretionary programs, and they're going to be handled through federal solicitations at a federal level. There is at least 2 more formula programs coming. The carbon program, which to read it is not unlike the TAP and CMAQ program, so it would fund projects, trails, bike paths, congestion relief projects, transit projects, these sorts of activities. A portion of that funding is going to be suballocated to this table to program. So that is another opportunity to fund projects through this process. There's another formula program called the Protect program. We're not really sure what role the MPO might play in that. It reads more like it's a coastal protection program. So it might be funds that kind of get steered towards the New York City, Long Island area. So I just want to give you that context. This funding does include the increase in infrastructure funding to us. And the other element that I wanted to point out is we don't not yet have the detailed project listings that I know many of you at this table care about, which would include the fund sources by year and schedule and dollar value. They are still being negotiated with the department because we have to sort out the schedules. This was a very unusual TIP development process with a lot of challenges in terms of working through the process. We're this close to the finish line. But the good news is that the projects that are being released today for public review are firm commitments. There may be some additional projects added in the next few weeks as TAP CMAQ gets announced. There could be other programs that come through, but the core of what our TIP is going to be is likely to be what you're seeing now. So does anyone have any questions about the TIP? And we'll come back to voting on the motions because we have to sequentially go through some things, unfortunately. But any questions?
Sandy, I noticed looking at the funding, both funding the project type, that set asides, could you briefly describe a set aside? That's something that isn't at the discretion of the planning committee. It's established by somebody else. How is that determined? I understand, for example, transit has to come from federal transit funds, but for example, there was some money set aside for highway safety set aside.
Yes.
How is that determined?
So many of the set asides are NISDOT multi-site programs, which are 8 county programs. Do you want to explain a little bit?
So we, in the interest of efficiency, because we bundle 8 county work across this MPO, HFTC, and the 2 rural counties. And so in order to represent that money on the TIP, we bring forth an estimation of how much of the 8 county work are we going to spend and bring to this 4 county area. So if you look at the STIP later, statewide STIP is going to have a much larger number for each of these categories for the 8 counties. But this is the portion getting spent here, approximation.
So the department region 1 determines that between this MPO and the one up in Glens Falls. Okay, thank you.
The HSIP set aside is intended to, HSIP is the most challenging fund source to spend because of all the rules. So whatever we could program to projects, we set in a block. So if anybody identifies a high crash location that they can fix, they should bring forth a project whenever they find it, because it's the hardest one to spend.
Any other questions? Okay, well, thanks again for the presentation. That's a great overview.
Yeah, so as Sandy said, we're gonna move to this a little unconventional. We're not going to ask for a resolution. The guys just threw in front of you. Because we actually have to go in and make a series of amendments.
Correct.
But I can tell you, like in Transit's case, we received more money this year, obviously, than last year. We modified our capital plan accordingly. So there are projects in here that actually aren't new, but they're just increased amounts. It's a process.
It's
Bear with us. First up is the the faded one.
Happy with this is done.
Sure. We'll be happy with this.
Can we start?
Yeah, I'm just gonna pull this up so that we can share it with our audience.
The first tip amendments for DOT project that we bring forward to fund an active overheight detection and warning system to hopefully catch a much higher percentage of trucks and overheight vehicles that travel down Glenridge Road. This year, we're constructing a turnaround area that is basically overlaying a cul-de-sac on the Glenridge Road, so the truck can self U-turn after they're warned. The next season, we're actually install the system that detects the truck and has a series of signs that light up and really grab attention better. Where these have been installed elsewhere, there's a north of a 90% reduction in bridge hits, which I think is pretty welcome to that section of highway. So this project's about $1.8 million. It is funded from it's not funded from core fund sources that come here, so off the top main office funds. Any questions?
You guys got any insurance funding from when they did this? You guys would bill
It's not our bridge, so
them? Oh, so,
it's the railroad bridge.
okay, so you guys, this is just actually for the alert and whatever.
Yeah, so ultimately, the signs will light up to warn the person that they're over height, give them some instruction to pull over. We'll dispatch a message to the local police and state police. And our traffic management center will have cameras light up so we can keep eyes on it.
Really stupid people keep it on.
Greg, did trucks hit this, I mean, did the trucks hit this bridge 20 years ago as much as they do now? We just find out about it more because of.
There's two layers to it. 20 years ago, the bridge was so narrow that even a car would worry. It was clearly small. When we widened it out, with meetings and stuff, everyone bought into the keep the bridge low, but make it a standard highway section.
Okay.
So, and then combine that with the continued advent of self GPS units.
Roundabouts made it easier to get.
Roundabouts made it easier to get in, and
There.
self GPS units just take you the fastest route.
Yep.
Because your phone doesn't know you're driving a truck. They should have a commercial GPS.
Yep.
They do have
Hey.
They're supposed to have.
They're supposed to have the commercial one, but folks use their phone, which will send them down a short road.
I think you probably answered this before, but is there a head knocker, whatever you want to call it, the airport has, is that just ugly? Or does it not work because they're going 40 miles an hour?
It's a potential hazard.
It's a potential hazard at this speed. At 5 miles an hour, you bump it.
Yeah.
You know, it's not
40, you
down.
whack it.
I'm just thinking a whole bunch of cans hanging off of heavy chains or whatever. That make a lot of noise.
Be cheaper solution.
Yes, although you still need to have something alert and everyone that make it, but it'd be a lot cheaper than probably some of the other things. You can still wire it to make the sign go off.
So we need a motion, yes.
Another question.
Sure.
Motion, second.
Steve and Phil.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, everyone. This is the departments as well, right?
It sure is. Yep.
Feasibility study 787.
Yeah, this was a product of the state budget to $5 million study for engineering and feasibility of reimagining the 787 corridor. We're adding this to the tip to get started, essentially. Get this program on the tip. Also, funds that don't count against core funds. Just getting going on a scope of services. He's engaging a committee to some various folks to get a committee going to steer this whole engineering and feasibility. Planned area is going to be from essentially from the thruway to 23 up to 7. With various focus areas that build on the previous study done here.
New money, right?
New money?
Second. Zero.
Aye.
I'm sure the mayor wishes she was here. The next set is actually our transit projects, CDTA projects. The last 3 are new. The first 6 are existing projects that, because of the fact that we now receive more money, more 5307 money, if you saw that up there. Old projects. To them, the last 3 are facility design. We've run out of space, basically, so we need to start looking at design of the new facility. How big is it? Where should it go? Radio equipment, so over and above, that's our communication system. Flex is our micro transit project, micro transit service that we would like to expand. Small vehicles, you order the vehicle on your handheld device. It's like some big version of Uber. That's the way we do that. So that's a quick background on what is really new, but most of these old just one.
It just increases money for projects already on the tip, is that what it is?
In most cases, we have you in a few. Again, this is the influence of the bipartisan infrastructure law.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hey, guys, appreciate it. Kara, you gonna do 5310?
Explain it.
Sure. So the next item on the agenda is the 10 project for the Center for Disability Services. That is a project that came out of the February-ish solicitation that I saw at Public Transit Bureau Health. So I think we're ready for that, which is for enhanced mobility for seniors and disabilities, which primarily funds vans, vehicles for not-for-profit organizations. Specialized institution. So this project is one of a number of projects that were selection committee ranked highly. This one is above the threshold that we have set for policy board, required policy board approval instead of only planning. It's I guess to fund 4 vehicles for the Center for Disability Services as well as a new dispatch system, because their existing dispatch system is not working anymore, so it's not going to work soon.
6 vehicles, just.
6. Correct.
Questions on this one? Move it. Motion. Those in favor? Thanks, Karen. Okay, so now we're actually coming back to where we were, because now that we approved the amendments, we now have a full package, right? So we can move the draft TDP document to the public review process. It's a series of steps that we're going to make. So we're looking for a motion. Oh, Elton, you want to talk about this? Or?
Just, we've clearly given you a lot of background already. This is simply the text of the document, as I indicated earlier. What's yet to come is going to be detailed project listings. Right now, you just are going to see a project list for those of you here in the room. You received a handout on the projects that were funded. Online, you'll see all the same materials on our website. Once we have those, part of the motion today needs to be your comfort level with allowing staff to release the detailed project listings for public review when we have them, as we don't plan on having a planning committee meeting until August, and we can't physically wait that long. So part of the motion needs to note that detail.
There's a pedestal of, I think the last time when we had our meeting in March, it was a request that we get notified like a day ahead of time or something like that, just to look it over.
Yep. We can certainly do that.
All right, so give me the motion again.
I'll summarize it as we need a motion to authorize, to approve the draft tip for public review and authorize staff to release the detailed draft project listings after a 1-day review by the policy board. And that basically summarizes it.
All in favor?
But
Good question.
the list hasn't changed, right? Since last.
The project list, this reflects
This
the, yes, this reflects the new projects that are being added. So
Yeah.
these are the same.
And that's from June 16th.
Is that the correct date?
I think that's the one. I
Well, that's
printed
probably
off.
when that was printed, but it's
Yeah.
the same as what we ended on, is like May 18th.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, everybody. I know it's a little confusing. Kind of went forward
I have a
and
few
back.
different lists. I just want to make sure.
There's a lot of lists. We're good at making lists, that's for sure.
Well, again, just for people who are.
Checking
new,
it twice.
You know, you're watching $500 million worth of projects, come through, get evaluated, get sorted, get approved. Guys and Kerry and others that are not in the room have a lot of work to get us to this point.
Mm.
Then the planning committee consists of a lot of people here, people who work for you. Arm wrestle these projects in place, I think was pretty easy for us to.
I understand there was a lot of arm wrestling session.
You know, I will say this, the process worked from the point of view that we reached consensus. And it took some time and some work to get there, but we were able to come to a set of projects that I think everybody feels comfortable with leaving the room with a good program.
Okay, so now we've got to go back to the air quality conformity document.
Correct.
And need to do the same thing, need to approve it, draft transportation quality document, it to public. review.
Correct. Any other questions or comments about that?
Motion for that.
Second, Linda?
All those in favor? Great, less controversial. All in favor. Okay, now we're gonna move to the Unified Planning Work Program, so if we totally confuse you.
Oh, we just got one more small thing on the tip, if you don't mind, Barb. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on the public process, Jen?
Sorry about that. John.
No, you're fine. That's totally.
So once the tip is ready to go to public review, CDTC has planned a thorough, and I think creative public review and consultation period of process. So we have a number of events currently scheduled and we'll do ongoing outreach to the public through our social media, through the website. We'll be doing press releases. We have a virtual workshop scheduled for July 19th. That'll be recorded and available on the website so that people could watch it and take surveys and polls related to their opinions about the tip at their own pace. We also have a open house scheduled in Saratoga County at the office of Boston Spa on July 27th. That will be in the evening. That's an open house style type of meeting. And then August 2nd at the Albany Main Branch Library. We are trying to reach as much of the region as possible, particularly populations that are dependent on transit or may not have as much transportation access. So we will, we've reached out to farmers markets and other community types of events. We're working with CDTA to partner where they're tabling at events around the region. So we'll be doing kind of like those small, we're calling them pop-up events. So we'll have a table or staff available just to hand out a walk sheet with a QR code to go to the website or more information on the tip and how to participate. So and we'll have a portal on the webpage that collects comments and lets the public take a survey and poll to the tip. So the public comment period will go through August 12th. will be collecting, compiling, and summarizing all the feedback we get on an ongoing basis, so the planning committee in August will update them, and then we'll have a full summary.
So we will try to, as the dates get announced, particularly in the sections of the region you folks are around or live in or represent, we'll make sure you guys get the meeting dates and locations so we can help get some turnout. That's it. We don't need a motion on that one, Carmen. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, now the Unified Plan Work Program, which is a whole other
Yes, so our work plan, again, as a result of the bipartisan infrastructure law, we have, the first item is actually our performance and expenditure reports. This will be the last time I'll bring this to you for action. It turns out that we're the only MPO in the state that apparently brings this to the policy board for action. Most of them just share it for discussion. So I'll bring it for you for discussion at future meetings. But this essentially summarizes the work that we completed under our federal grants for the past year. So if you're interested in more details about what we do and how we do it, take a look at that document. It'll probably give you a sense of the kinds of activities that we work on and the amount of work that goes into the planning side of what we do over the course of a year. So we are federally required to develop this performance and expenditure report, formerly known as the progress report for those of you who've been around for a long time. And a copy of this goes to Federal Highway, FTA, and to DOT. So we will need a motion today. But as I said, this will be the last time that we need to formally act on the progress report.
See, all those in favor? Aye. Last time.
Last time.
And now we've got an amendment.
Yes, so as a result of the bipartisan infrastructure law, we too received additional funding for our planning work here. We have two grants. We have a federal highway planning grant and we have a federal transit administration grant. The federal highway grant was already addressed when we updated the UPWP back in March at our March meeting. Now we had similarly to CDTA, we had an increase in the FTA side. So what the amendment does is fold in the increased funding into our work plan. And specifically, what you're seeing on the screen right now represents the activities that we added some money to. So committee activities, the management of groups like this that we have here at CDTC. We added some funds to our environmental justice Title VI task. We adjusted our GIS task by moving some money around, increased our transportation data collection line so that we could ensure we have a data collection consultant funding for this upcoming year. We changed and increased our active transportation line by a bit. We adjusted one of our other lines to account for that. And we also increased our TIP funding, our Human Services Agency Transportation funding line, our transit planning line, and our TDM line, as well as some staff time assigned to one of our statewide contracts for the Shared Transit Services Planning and Analytics Project. But essentially, this adds over $106,000 to our work plan. We need a motion to approve those changes.
Steve, all those in favor?
Aye.
Great. All right, we made it through the meat of the meeting. Now we have our section where we just give everybody a chance to update us on what's going on in the shops.
Sure. So I'm just going to share real quick two things. We recently completed our Bike to Work program, Bike to Work Day. And I wanted to announce the trophy winners. So I'd like to congratulate the city of Waterville, known as the Arsenal City Cyclers, for winning in Albany County. Rensselaer County, the Capital Roots team won for largest team. These are the largest teams. Largest team in Saratoga County was the Boston Spa Central School District. And largest team in Schenectady County went to Union College. We also had highest participation, again, from Waterville. City of Waterville, the Capital Roots team. The Saratoga Springs Public Library had the most participation in Saratoga County, and in Schenectady County, the town of Niskuna Town Hall. So just in terms of some statistics, we had 275 registrants cycling over 2,800 miles, saving 115 gallons of gas, reducing 1.1 tons of CO2, and burning 132,000 calories. So just some fun statistics, and we just wanted to thank everybody who participated in the program, in the challenge. And we also have a current challenge that you might have heard a little bit about, which is the Ditch the Car Challenge. You know, we launched this last year, but with the increase in gas prices this year, there is no better time to encourage people to try other modes of transportation. So we really have been pushing the marketing of this Ditch the Car Challenge hard, and we encourage you to share this with your, municipal folks in your community. It's a great try. It's a fun way. The challenge allows for some interactive approaches to checking out places in the region, trying transit, using bicycling, walking to get around. We have prizes and badges that you can earn throughout the summer, and it's a little bit of a self-challenge because it allows you to log your trips and you can compete with your fellow competitors. But again, given the high price of gasoline, it's a great opportunity to kind of get folks introduced to other ways to move around the region.
Question for Cindy.
Yeah.
Whenever we look at ditching the car or some alternatives, it's either car or bike ped. Where are motorcycles in this?
Well, I think because they're still single passenger operated vehicles, that's what we're trying to encourage people to try to do that differently. At least that's in my mind. It's an interesting question. If the goal is to, from a greenhouse gas emissions perspective, motorcycles are different than motor vehicles. But I think we're viewing this through the lens of, the biking and walking clearly don't have any emissions, but moving to transit or a carpool situation or some way of traveling where you're not just alone in your vehicle is really what we're trying to target. Try to get some CDTA sponsorship over there.
He's trying to get me to write a check. What about you?
We have a number of planning activities going on besides these. The Troon Creek Greenway Trail public review has ended.
We're just wrapping up and
Finalizing that report. We have a number of planning studies that are wrapping up. We'll be able to spend some more time with you in September, kind of brief you on some of that work because we just haven't had time to brief you on that because we've been so wrapped up in the transportation improvement program. So we'll be able to share more information on that. And I'll stop there.
Hey, Mark, what's going on next door?
What isn't going on next door? So we'll have an in-person workshop for the first time since 2019, coming up October the 3rd Friday in October at Hudson Valley Community College. Excited about that. I just want to remind everyone around the table of our Joint Technical Assistance Program with CDTC. We are accepting applications through December that provides technical assistance services, GIS mapping, demographic analysis, a whole bunch of other technical assistance for very, very low cost. I wanted to also remind folks around the table that if you have a project that involves any intermunicipal activity, when towns or community collaborating with one another or with a nonprofit organization, CDRPC is soliciting award nominations for Rastus Corning II Intermunicipal Cooperation Awards. We also get the award for the longest name of an awards program too. And we are still eagerly awaiting the full release of the census, 2020 census data. Once we get the age cohort data releases, we will be progressing with our population projections that we complete every 10 years. We do have the municipal data, and we've started some of that work to date. And then I'm very pleased to announce that we're have kicked off our climate leadership program funded by the DEC. CDRPC is managing that program. It's called the Eastern Territory of New York, so 34 counties. And that's basically a program that provides a lot of hand-holding to local governments to help them get connected to state funding, to help them develop through the steps of becoming a certified climate smart community. So if you have any questions or further information on that, you can check out our website. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark. For us over at CDTA, just finished a $15 million expansion of our facility in Albany. Lots of disruption, but well worth it. You may have heard of our expansion. Fifth County has joined the authority of Montgomery County. We'll start service there on August 28th. First opinion, much needed. A long time to get it done, but we're happy with where we are. You may have also read or heard in the media that we are talking to our partners in Warren County, specifically Glens Falls, with merging or assuming the operation of that service. So it's a small municipally run service. Primarily Glens Falls, Queensbury, Lake George. Take several months to finish. Our ridership is nearing 80% of what it was before the pandemic. Nationwide, that's higher than the average. And honestly, I don't know if we'll go much past that. People have not returned to the workplace, their offices, whatever it might be, and won't. So 80% is probably a reasonable resting spot for us. It's also just traits of this. We own and operate the rail station, right? So that is at least the parking facility. Parking facility is 100% of what it was. So I think people have resumed travel by rail as well to the city. So that's good to see. And our seasonal services are starting to kick off in Grafton Park, Saratoga, a whole bunch of seasonal nature bus, a whole bunch of stuff that we have.
I am Pat called away. So, recent bid openings, couple of projects of note. You're going to see some work at exit 6 here coming up. Crash pattern we're going to solve at the yield ramps. We're going to take the yield ramps and turn them into a merge lane, so it'll fix the condition that was presented some issues to us. The low bids came in around 1.4 million, which was less than we had on the tip, but 30% higher than our engineer's estimate. So we thought we adjusted the prices enough. Continue to try to move towards the moving target that we're all seeing. And then the other project we let recently, it's a state-funded project to pave some of Route 4 in the city of Canada. Border over there needs some attention, so that made the street for about 1.9 million. Like I said, we're adjusting our unit prices to estimate, but it's a moving target. Otherwise, staff news. For those of you that knew Dave Reddick when he was here in Region 1, he has officially retired, and he's being replaced with Brian Kelly. He's formerly a regional director of Region 6 in Cornell. Was a planning program manager there, so he's very familiar with stuff, but he's taking the role of Dave Reddick.
And hot off the press, reason I had to leave is anyone heading to Troy or Rensselaer County, don't take alternate 7.
It took me an hour to get back on December, so thank you.
So that means Northwood's probably going to be backed up, right?
It could be, but they got both directions, multiple car crashes, so only 1 lane in each direction is running.
Okay,
Thank you for the.
thanks for the warning. Freeway, I'm sorry.
I don't think we have anyone present either way.
All right, Steve, it's all yours.
Thank you, Chairman Basile. You heard it here first. We are officially back to January 2020 levels for passengers at Albany Airport. Confirmed with CFO and financial staff. So that's good news to share for our region, 15 county primary market area. Phil wanted me to mention our excellent progress with the first and 25-year master plan effort. We'll be convening technical advisory after Labor Day and regional advisory sometime after that in the fall. New forecast is in. So we're making good progress with that. We bid the Crosswind runway, 7,200 linear feet by 150. Callahan's low bidder, about a 7.9 million. Anticipated. So taking that off shortly. Answer the Secretary of Transportation. Quick overview. I'm glad to hear you're taking on the Uber Lyft dilemma. They're impossible to manage, so please come with many alternates to the TNC.
One
Lyft.
step forward, 2 steps back.
Right, understood.
Yep.
Anyway, happy to answer any questions. Thanks for playing Albany.
So we're happy to hear your throughput is back to where it was.
Yes. that's
How about the departures?
larger planes, so it's fewer scheduled flights. I can remember when we were micro hub with a lot of small commuters and turboprops and all that. 110 scheduled flights a day, we're at 44. So did I answer your question on
Yes.
operations? So bigger planes is the carrier's answer to continue their ongoing profit margins. The planes are all full, as you probably noticed. There's nary an empty seat. So
Is American stopping and going Islip and one other destination, is that going to impact you?
it's a churn. I can't speak to. I'm sorry. It's one of the most dynamic aspects of our air travel business. Cargo is strong. 10% growth still on air cargo. We have a lot of plans. The master plan will include a lot of exciting proposals for expansion of our airport facilities. Thank you.
Mr. Thor, that leave me.
Please you.
Yeah.
With the wind report.
Yeah, it might be on the same issue that Steve has. It's a good thing and a bad thing. Our ships are down number wise. When I'm looking through all our charts, our longshore hours and our tonnage are up. So they're putting more on bigger ships to get them here, which is good for our longshore workers. Really, the port itself as an authority loses some money on package and wharfage charges, but as long as men and women are coming through the gate every day and getting a job, that's really what our stewardship, I think, is more about than making money off the wharf specifically. Next Tuesday night, we're going to the south end of Albany to join the community there along with EPA, Lee, Connick and Tonko, and Mayor Sheehan, a local administrator, and some others are going to be there to talk about air quality and the south end of Albany in particular, the city in general, truck traffic in particular, traffic in the region all around, what the port can do, team up with the neighborhoods there in the city and what the city can do and what the groups can do, and just kind of bring people together to show what's going on. Impacts that can hopefully be avoided in the future from new purchases from the port, from maybe some new advancements in types of engines that we're purchasing, trains, engines that have been purchased. Looking at other ways to get fork trucks, either electric or hydrogen or anything else other than diesel and gas that we're working off of now. That leads a long way to our big project that's always at the front of my desk, and that's our expansion project. Since our last meeting, I already said as the planning committee, we finished our seeker. Finding statement was approved by the town planning board. We received site plan approval. Received several permits that we needed. DEC in the town said we're approved to start cutting down trees. We cut down all the trees. The government said that you should cut down all those trees. You can't uncut trees, so we're in a little bit of a situation now that some reporters have put out there in the usual way that our local reporters do, is 50% rate, 50% not even close. They clearly did not read the environmental reports that were put out there or go through any of the meeting minutes to show that us, along with very strenuous DEC and EPA and Army Corps monitoring, have done pretty much everything by the book. For any hazardous substances that are allegedly on our property, which actually are not there, picking up the papers that they are. So we're working through that federal pickup, and we are hopeful that that will get fixed in the next few weeks. Different timeline, some of our state agencies. That's a funding issue, not a project issue, which is what we care about. We certainly need the funding, but we don't plan on stopping. This is just slow down. Unfortunately. So hopefully at our next meeting, we'll be back on track.
What federal agency is that?
It's no, they're a problem. Since we're being taped, it's a section of DOT. that handles water.
It's the interest of protecting. Jordan, thanks, Pat. Any regional or local planning activities we have to cover?
No, it's open to the table if there's anyone who would like to share anything.
Is anybody? Any other business? Out there in remote land? Great, everybody's happy. Okay, upcoming meetings, not much in the summer. We try to keep the calendar free, July 12th. Active Transportation Planning Advisory Committee, and on the 3rd of August, always exciting planning committee, the arm wrestling.
I'll tell you that. I'm very happy that one of our workers, employees left, so I got to be put on the planning committee. I was not told it was going to meet weekly. So
Highly unusual.
I'd rather not do that.
Yes, it was certainly, I'll say this, it was beyond our control.
I learned a lot, actually. I learned a lot listening to half of the people that are here going through projects and teaching me a little more about certain things.
Yeah, and that honestly, that's part of why we're not meeting in the month of July. We've taken up enough of everybody's time, so we really appreciate the time you folks devoted to the process. We know it was challenging, but we got through it.
So in the interest of time, I think we did this in not record fashion, I was aiming for an hour. Thanks, everybody. Have a great summer.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Great.